The galaxy was old. Very, very old. Long before humans learned to make fire, 12 great empires had already spread across the stars. They called themselves the Galactic Concord. They had ruled the Orion Arm for 60,000 years. They had seen species rise and fall like waves on a beach. They had watched young civilizations discover space travel, celebrate their achievement, and then realize how small they truly were. The Concord had stopped being impressed a long time ago. Ambassador Valeth Sorn stood at the observation window of her station and looked down at the blue planet below. Earth, home of humanity, her new assignment. She considered it a punishment. Valeth was a Thyrani, tall, elegant, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed soft purple. Her people had mastered faster than light travel when humans were still living in caves. They had built cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants. They had weapons that could crack moons in half. And now she was here, watching hairless apes argue about imaginary lines on a map. 300 years, she said to her assistant, a young Thyrani named Korath. 300 years since we discovered them. And what have they accomplished? Korath pulled up a holographic display. Data streams flowed across the air between them. They have reached their moon, he said. They have sent machines to their neighboring planets. They have built a few stations in orbit around their world. Valeth made a sound of disappointment. That is all? They spend most of their resources fighting each other, Ambassador. They have had 2 global wars in the last century alone. They seem unable to stop. How sad. Valeth turned away from the window. A species that destroys itself before it can even leave its own system. We have seen this before. She walked to her desk and sat down. Her job was simple. Watch the humans, write reports, and send them to the Concord. No one would read them. No one cared. Humanity was not a threat. They were not even interesting. They were just another failed experiment of evolution, destined to burn out in nuclear fire or choke on their own pollution. But Valeth was thorough. She had not become an ambassador by being lazy. So she studied the humans. She learned their languages. She watched their broadcasts. She read their histories, and she noticed something strange. Korath, she said one evening, come look at this. Her assistant joined her at the display. She had pulled up images of human weapons throughout history. Spears, swords, bows and arrows, cannons, rifles, tanks, missiles. What am I looking at, Ambassador? Their weapons, Valeth said. Look at them. All of them. Korath studied the images. They are primitive. Chemical propellants. Explosive compounds. Nothing we have not seen before. Yes, but look at the pattern. Valeth zoomed out, showing the progression of human warfare. Every civilized species in the galaxy abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. Throwing metal at your enemies is inefficient. Energy weapons are superior in every way. More accurate, more powerful, easier to maintain. This is known, Ambassador, but humans never stopped. Valeth's voice held a note of confusion. They keep improving their kinetic weapons. They make them faster, more accurate, more deadly. Even now, when they have laser technology, they still build guns. They still fire bullets. They still launch missiles. Korath shrugged. They are primitive. They do not know any better. Valeth was silent for a long moment. She stared at the images of human weapons. Something bothered her about them. Something she could not name. Perhaps, she finally said. Perhaps you are right. She filed the observation in her report. She noted humanity's strange attachment to kinetic weapons. She called it a cultural oddity, a sign of their primitive nature. No one at the Concord read the report. The months passed. Valeth watched humanity stumble forward. They launched more satellites. They talked about going to Mars. They built bigger bombs and then promised not to use them. They were chaotic and violent and unpredictable, but they were also resilient. Every time Valeth thought they would destroy themselves, they pulled back from the edge. They survived. They kept going. They kept building. And they kept making weapons. One day, Valeth noticed something new in her scans. Deep beneath the surface of their moon, humans were building something. Something big. The energy readings were enormous. What is that? She asked Korath. He analyzed the data. Unknown, Ambassador. Some kind of construction project. The energy signature suggests acceleration technology. Magnetic rails, perhaps. A transport system? Possibly. The scale seems excessive for that purpose. But, he shrugged, humans are wasteful. They probably want to move rocks from one part of the moon to another. Valeth accepted the explanation. It made sense. Humans were always building things they did not need. It was part of their charm. She did not investigate further. She did not ask why a transport system would need enough power to light up a small city. She did not wonder why the magnetic rails were pointed outward, toward the stars. She simply filed another report and went back to watching the strange little species on their strange little planet. In her defense, she had no way of knowing what she was looking at. No one in the galaxy had ever seen a weapon like the one humanity was building. No one had ever thought to create such a thing. But humanity had. Because humanity had spent 10,000 years learning one simple truth. The best way to kill your enemy was to hit them very, very hard. And they were about to show the galaxy just how hard they could hit. The Thyrani fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 17 warships, arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleamed like polished obsidian. Their shields hummed with energy that could stop a meteor strike. Their weapons could turn planets into ash. Admiral Kethran Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the tiny blue dot in the distance. Earth, home of the humans. His target. Open a channel, he commanded. All frequencies. His communications officer obeyed. A moment later, the Admiral's voice was broadcasting across the entire system. Attention, humans of Earth. I am Admiral Kethran Voss, of the Thyrani Dominion. By order of the Galactic Concord, your species has been deemed too dangerous to remain unsupervised. Your weapons programs, your aggressive nature, and your inability to maintain peace among yourselves have made you a threat to galactic stability. He paused, enjoying the moment. He had delivered this speech to a dozen primitive species before. They always reacted the same way. Fear, panic, desperate pleas for mercy. You will surrender your weapons, he continued. You will accept protective governance under the Concord. You will obey our laws and follow our guidance. In return, we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy and help you become a civilized species. You have 12 hours to respond. Failure to comply will result consequences. He cut the transmission and smiled. This would be easy. It always was. Ambassador Valeth Sorn watched from her observation station with her arms crossed. She had not been informed of the fleet's arrival. This was not a diplomatic mission. This was a show of force, a reminder to humanity of their place in the galaxy. She did not approve, but she understood. The Concord was growing impatient with humanity. Their weapons programs were advancing too quickly. Their population was growing too fast. Better to bring them under control now, before they became a real problem. Ambassador, Korath said, we are receiving a response from Earth. Valeth raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Usually primitive species took hours to organize a response. Put it through. A human face appeared on her display. It was a woman. Old, with gray hair and hard eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and ribbons. This is General Catherine Wright of the United Earth Defense Council, the woman said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. We have received your message. We have discussed it among ourselves, and we have decided on our response. The general leaned forward, her eyes cold as ice. You have 12 hours to leave our system. There will be no second warning. The transmission ended. Valeth stared at the blank screen. For a moment, she could not believe what she had just heard. A primitive species, with no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no advanced weapons, had just threatened the most powerful fleet in the sector. She laughed. She could not help it. The arrogance was almost admirable. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Voss was not laughing. He was furious. They dare threaten us? He snarled. 17 warships. We have enough firepower to burn their planet to glass. His officers shifted nervously. They had never seen the Admiral so angry. Sir, his second-in-command said carefully, perhaps we should consider. Consider what? They are insects. They have nothing that can hurt us. Our shields can withstand solar flares. Our weapons can crack moons. What can they possibly do? No one answered. The hours passed. The fleet held its position. Earth made no further communications, no surrender, no negotiation, just silence. Admiral Voss waited. He was patient. He had done this before. Sooner or later, The humans would realize their situation. They would beg for mercy. They always did, but the silence continued. At hour 10, something appeared on the fleet's sensors, a single vessel, emerging from behind the moon. It was small, ugly, barely 100 meters long. It had no visible weapons, no shields, no elegance. It looked like a metal brick with engines attached. "What is that?" Admiral Voss demanded. His sensor officer studied her displays. "Unknown design, Admiral. Human origin. It is positioning itself between us and the planet. One ship? They send one ship to face 17 warships?" The Admiral laughed. "This is their defense? This is their response?" The human vessel stopped moving. It hung in space, silent and still. It did not hail the fleet. It did not attempt to negotiate. It simply waited. Admiral Voss felt a flicker of unease. Something about the situation felt wrong. The humans were arrogant, yes, but were they stupid? Would they really send a single unarmed ship to face an entire fleet? "Scan that vessel," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about it." His officers obeyed. Data flowed across their screens. "Admiral," the sensor officer said slowly, "the ship appears to be a weapon." "A weapon? The entire ship?" "Yes, sir. The main body is a magnetic acceleration system. Extremely powerful. The energy readings are. I have never seen anything like this. It is like they built a ship around a gun." Admiral Voss stared at the ugly little vessel. A gun. The humans had built a flying gun. He should have been worried. He should have ordered his fleet to move. He should have taken the threat seriously. But he was tyranny. His shields could stop anything. Energy weapons, plasma bolts, nuclear missiles, nothing could penetrate tyranny defenses. Whatever the humans were planning, it would not work. "Hold position," he commanded. "Let them fire. Let them see how useless their primitive weapons are against us." He settled back in his chair and waited for the humans to learn their place. He had no idea that in 60 seconds, he would be dead. He had no idea that his entire fleet would be destroyed. He had no idea that he was about to become a lesson for the entire galaxy. The railgun charged, the targeting systems locked, and then it fired. The projectile was simple. A tungsten rod, 2 meters long, 30 centimeters wide. No explosives, no guidance systems, no complex technology. Just metal, shaped into a dart. The magnetic rails accelerated it to 12% of the speed of light. To put that in perspective, light travels at 300,000 kilometers per second. 12% of that is 36,000 kilometers per second. The distance between the human ship and the Tyranny flagship was about 50,000 kilometers. The projectile crossed that distance in less than 2 seconds. Admiral Voss never saw it coming. His sensors detected a launch. His computers tried to calculate the trajectory. His shields began to adjust, but there was no time. There was never going to be enough time. The tungsten rod hit the eternal dominion like the fist of an angry god. Tyranny shields were designed to disperse energy. Lasers, plasma, radiation, they could handle all of it. The energy would spread across the shield surface and dissipate harmlessly. It was elegant technology, perfected over thousands of years. But the railgun did not fire energy. It fired mass. Simple, brutal, physical mass. The rod passed through the shield like it was not there. The shield tried to stop it, tried to push back against the projectile. But there was nothing to push against. No energy to disperse, just metal moving faster than anything had a right to move. The rod entered the flagship through the front hull. It exited through the back. The entire journey took less than 1,000th of a second. But in that 1,000th of a second, physics happened. The kinetic energy transfer was catastrophic. The rod was moving so fast that when it hit the ship, it did not just punch a hole. It transferred its momentum to everything it touched. Metal vaporized. Bulkheads shattered. The ship's structure could not handle the stress. The eternal dominion did not explode. It came apart. The hull cracked and split like an egg dropped on concrete. Atmosphere vented into space. Bodies tumbled into the void. The great warship that had conquered 100 worlds broke into 1,000 pieces in the span of a heartbeat. Admiral Catherine Voss died without understanding what had killed him. On her observation station, Ambassador Valith Sorn watched in frozen horror. Her mind could not process what she was seeing. The flagship was gone. Just gone. One moment it was there, proud and powerful. The next moment it was debris. "No," she whispered. "That is not possible." But the human ship was not finished. It rotated slightly, adjusting its aim. The magnetic rails hummed with power. Another projectile loaded into the chamber. The remaining 16 Thyrani warships finally understood what was happening. They understood that their shields were useless. They understood that their weapons could not fire fast enough. They understood that they were going to die. They tried to run. The human ship fired again. Another warship shattered. Then another. Then another. The railgun could fire once every 6 seconds. The reloading system was automatic. The targeting computer was precise. The crew of the human vessel did not celebrate or cheer. They simply did their job. Fire, reload, fire, reload, fire, reload. 16 ships, 90 seconds, 16 kills. Valeth watched the massacre in silence. She could not move. She could not speak. She could only watch as the pride of the Thyrani Dominion was reduced to spinning debris and cooling corpses. When it was over, the human ship stopped firing. It hung in space among the wreckage, silent and still. It did not pursue the escape pods. It did not gloat. It did not broadcast victory messages. It simply turned around and flew back to the moon. The silence was terrible. Valeth had witnessed battles before. She had seen ships destroyed, crews killed, fleets defeated. But there had always been noise, screaming, explosions, the chaos of combat. This had not been combat. This had been execution. 17 warships, 4,000 crew members. The most advanced military technology in the sector. All of it destroyed by a single vessel firing metal rods. Valeth's hands were shaking. She realized she was crying. She did not know why. She had not liked Admiral Voss. She had not cared about his mission. But something about what she had just witnessed had broken something inside her. She had spent her entire career believing in Thyrani superiority. Her people were ancient, powerful, civilized. They had conquered the stars while humans were still learning to farm. They were better. They had always been better. But the humans had just killed 4,000 of her people in 90 seconds. And they had done it with rocks. Not advanced technology. Not superior science. Not elegant weapons. Just metal. Thrown very fast. It was so simple. So obvious. So primitive. And no one had ever thought to do it. Why would they? Energy weapons were better. Everyone knew that. Energy weapons were more efficient, more accurate, more civilized. Kinetic weapons were relics of barbaric ages, abandoned by every advanced species. But humans had never abandoned them. Humans had looked at guns and asked, how can we make these kill harder? They had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing metal at their enemies. They had made it into a science. And now, they had taken that science to its ultimate conclusion. A weapon that could destroy anything. A weapon that shields could not stop. A weapon that moved too fast to dodge. A weapon that had just changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Valeth finally found her voice. She opened a channel to the Concord. "This is Ambassador Valeth Sorn," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were still wet with tears. "I am transmitting emergency footage from the Sol system. The Thyrani expeditionary fleet has been destroyed. All 17 vessels. There were no survivors." She paused, trying to find the right words. "The humans have built something terrible. Something we have never seen before. Something we have no defense against." She looked out the window at the blue planet below. The planet that had just proven it was not weak. Not primitive. Not insignificant. "We made a mistake," she said quietly. "We should never have come here." The Hall of Unity had not seen a full assembly in 3,000 years. It was a massive chamber, carved into the heart of a hollow moon, capable of holding representatives from every species in the Galactic Concord. For most of its existence, it had been empty, a monument to cooperation that no one needed to use. But now, for the first time in 30 centuries, all 12 elder empires had sent their leaders. They sat in a great circle, hundreds of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they watched the footage from Sol in complete silence. The video played on a holographic display the size of a small planet. Every detail was visible. The Thyrani fleet in formation, the ugly human ship emerging from behind the moon, the first shot, the flagship shattering, the massacre that followed. When it ended, no one spoke. High Chancellor Morveth of the Thyrani Dominion was the first to break the silence. He was old, even by Thyrani standards, with skin that had faded from silver to pale gray. His voice was barely a whisper. 4,000 of my people, he said, dead in 90 seconds. Our finest warships, our most experienced crews, gone. He looked around the chamber at the other leaders. His eyes were empty. How? He asked. How did this happen? The holographic display shifted. Technical data appeared, analysis from the Concorde's best scientists. Velocity calculations, impact simulations, energy readings. The weapon is a magnetic accelerator, explained Chief Scientist Yendeth of the Corellian Assembly. She was a small creature, covered in soft blue fur, with 6 arms that moved constantly as she spoke. It uses electromagnetic rails to accelerate a metal projectile to relativistic speeds, 12% of light speed, based on our calculations. We know what a railgun is, snapped Commander Drathos of the Velthari Empire. He was massive, reptilian, with scales like black armor. Primitive species use them all the time. They are toys, children's weapons. Not at this scale, Yendeth said quietly. Not at this speed. She pulled up more data. Diagrams of the human weapon, energy requirements, structural specifications. To accelerate a projectile to 12% of light speed requires an enormous amount of power, more than most starships can generate. The heat buildup alone would melt conventional materials. The magnetic fields would tear apart normal structures. She paused. Building a weapon like this should be impossible. The engineering challenges are immense. And yet the humans built it, said Morvith. Yes, they built it. Yendeth's voice held something that might have been admiration or fear. They found solutions to problems we never tried to solve, because we never tried to build such a weapon, because we never saw the point. Then we will build our own, Drathos said. We will match their weapons and destroy them. It is not that simple. Yendeth shook her head. The weapon itself is only part of the problem. The real question is, why did they build it at all? The chamber fell silent again. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it. Finally, an old voice spoke. It belonged to Elder Kassith of the Yindari Communion, the most ancient species in the Concord. The Yindari were creatures of light and energy, barely physical at all. They had existed for 100,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall like seasons. The humans built this weapon, Kassith said slowly. Because they are afraid, Drathos snorted. Afraid? They just destroyed an entire fleet. What do they have to fear? Everything. Kassith's voice was soft, like wind through leaves. Think about their history. They have spent their entire existence fighting, not other species themselves. War after war after war. Millions dead. Cities destroyed. Civilizations burned. The Elder paused, their form flickering like a candle. They have never known peace. Not truly. Not permanently. Every generation of humans has grown up knowing that enemies exist, that danger is real, that safety is an illusion. Kassith turned to face the assembly. So they prepare. They build weapons. They make themselves strong, not because they have enemies, but because they assume enemies will come. That is madness, Morvith said. That is survival, Kassith replied. We have lived in safety for so long that we have forgotten what fear feels like. But the humans have never forgotten. They carry it in their blood, in their bones, in every weapon they build. The chamber was quiet. The assembled leaders thought about their own histories, their own paths to the stars. Most of them had evolved on peaceful worlds. They had developed technology slowly, carefully, without the pressure of constant warfare. They had built weapons because they were useful, not because they were necessary. But humans were different. Humans had clawed their way up from the mud, fighting every step of the way. They had built weapons because weapons kept them alive. They had refined the art of killing because killing was how they survived. And now they had turned that terrible talent toward the stars. There is another problem, Yendeth said. She pulled up sensor data from the Sol system. We have detected at least 12 more railgun platforms hidden throughout human space. On their moon, on their asteroids, in orbit around their gas giants. All of them charged and ready. 12 more weapons. 12 more planet killers, hidden, waiting. If we attack them, Yendeth continued, they will fire. All of them. Simultaneously. Our fleets will be destroyed before they can get close enough to do any damage. Then we bombard them from a distance, Drathos said. Missiles. Long-range energy weapons. We do not need to get close. Their railguns have a range of several light minutes. They can hit anything that enters their system. Yendath's voice was flat. And there is something else. Something worse. She hesitated. The other leaders leaned forward. The projectiles travel at 12% of light speed. At that velocity, they could cross interstellar distances in decades rather than centuries. If the humans aimed their weapons at our homeworlds and fired. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The implication hung in the air like poison. The humans had not just built a defensive weapon. They had built a weapon that could reach across the stars. A weapon that could strike at any target in the galaxy, given enough time. A weapon that could not be stopped, could not be defended against, could not be escaped. They had built the ultimate deterrent, and everyone in the chamber knew, with terrible certainty, that if the Concord attacked humanity, humanity would fire. They would launch their projectiles at every homeworld they could target, and then they would wait. And in 10 years, or 50, or 100, those projectiles would arrive, and there would be nothing anyone could do to stop them. "What do we do?" Morvith asked. His voice was broken. Lost. Elder Cassith flickered again. When they spoke, their voice was heavy with something that might have been respect, or sorrow. "We do what they want us to do," the elder said. "We make peace." 6 months after the Battle of Sol, as the humans called it, the first diplomatic ship arrived in Earth orbit. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons. It came bearing gifts and treaties and an invitation that had never been offered to a species so young. Full membership in the Galactic Concord. As equals. Ambassador Violet Sorn was aboard that ship. She had requested the assignment personally. Some called her brave. Others called her foolish. But she needed to understand. She needed to look the humans in the eye and see what they really were. The human delegation met her at a space station in orbit around Earth. It was an ugly structure, all sharp angles and practical design. No elegance. No beauty. Just function. Like everything human, Valeth thought. General Catherine Wright was there, the same woman who had delivered the warning to the Thyrani fleet. She was smaller in person than she had seemed on the screen. Older, but her eyes were the same, hard and cold and absolutely certain. "Ambassador Sorn," the general said, extending her hand. "Welcome to Sol." Valeth had learned about human customs. She took the offered hand and shook it. The general's grip was firm, strong. "Thank you for receiving us," Valeth said carefully. "I know that trust is difficult. After what happened, trust is always difficult." The general smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That is why we build weapons." The negotiations took weeks. The humans were careful, patient. They read every word of every treaty. They asked questions that no primitive species should have thought to ask. They demanded guarantees and protections and rights that placed them on equal footing with empires that had existed for millennia. And the Concord gave them everything they asked for, because they had no choice. Valeth watched it all with a mixture of fascination and horror. She had spent her career looking down on lesser species. She had believed, truly believed, that the Thyrani and their allies were superior, more advanced, more civilized, better. But the humans had shattered that belief with a single shot. On the final day of negotiations, Valeth found herself alone with the human ambassador, a woman named Elena Chen. She was younger than General Wright, with dark hair and calm eyes. She spoke softly, but there was steel beneath her words. They sat in a small observation room, looking down at Earth. The planet glowed blue and green and white, beautiful and fragile. "May I ask you something?" Valeth said. "Of course. Why did you build the railguns?" Elena did not answer immediately. She looked at Earth for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "When we were children," she finally said, "we told stories about monsters, creatures that lived in the dark, beasts that would eat us if we wandered too far from the fire." She paused. "We never stopped believing in monsters, Ambassador. We just stopped calling them that." "But you had no enemies in space," Valeth said. "No one was threatening you. When you built those weapons, you did not even know we existed." "No, we did not know." Elena turned to face her. Her eyes were calm, patient, ancient in a way that had nothing to do with age. "But we assumed." "You assumed there would be enemies? We assumed the universe would be like us." Elena smiled faintly. "Violent, competitive, dangerous. We looked at the stars and we did not see wonder. Ambassador, We saw a battlefield that stretched forever, and we knew in our bones that somewhere out there, something was waiting to kill us. Valeth felt cold. She had faced warriors before, conquerors, tyrants, but she had never met a species that thought like this. A species that built weapons for wars that might never happen. A species that prepared for enemies that might not exist. That is, she searched for the right word. Terrifying. Yes, Elena nodded. It is. We terrify ourselves sometimes. The things we have done to each other, the wars we have fought, the weapons we have built. She shook her head. We are not proud of what we are, Ambassador, but we are alive, and we intend to stay that way, even if it means destroying others. We did not start that fight. Elena's voice hardened. Your people came to our home. Your people demanded our surrender. Your people threatened to burn our world. She leaned forward. We gave them a chance to leave. They chose to stay. What happened after that was their choice, not ours. Valeth had no response. She knew Elena was right. The Thyrani had started the conflict. The humans had only finished it. We do not want war, Elena said quietly. We have had enough war to last 1,000 lifetimes, but we will not be conquered. We will not be controlled. We will not bow to anyone, ever again. She looked back at Earth. That planet down there is our home, the only home we have ever known, and we will burn the galaxy to ash before we let anyone take it from us. The words should have been a threat, but they were not. They were a promise, a statement of fact. Simple and absolute. Valeth understood, finally, what made humans so dangerous. It was not their weapons. It was not their technology. It was not even their violence. It was their certainty. They knew, with absolute conviction, that enemies existed. They knew that peace was temporary. They knew that strength was the only thing that mattered in a universe that did not care about justice or fairness or civilization, and they had built their entire species around that knowledge. We will be good allies, Elena said. Loyal, reliable. We honor our commitments. But remember what we are, Ambassador. Remember what we built while we were still alone in the dark. She stood and extended her hand. Welcome to the Concord, she said. I hope we can be friends. Valeth took her hand and shook it. She smiled and said the appropriate words. But inside, she felt something she had never felt toward any species before. Fear, not of what humans might do, but of what they had already proven they were capable of. Later, as her ship left Earth orbit, she looked back at the blue planet. It looked so small, so harmless, just another world orbiting just another star. But she knew better now. She knew that down there, in the dark, the humans were watching the stars, waiting, preparing, and somewhere, hidden in their system, 12 railguns were pointed at the sky, ready to fire, ready to kill, ready to protect their world against any enemy that dared to threaten them. The Galactic Concord had ruled for 60,000 years. They had conquered 1,000 species. They had believed themselves masters of the stars, but now there was a new voice at the table. A species that had never known peace. A species that had never stopped preparing for war. A species that had built weapons for enemies that did not exist and then used those weapons to remind the universe why they should be feared. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.